I want to welcome my panel, Roland Martin, host of the daily digital show Roland Martin Unfiltered. Katie Fang is back with us. She's an MSNBC legal contributor and co-host of CNBC's Money Court. And Jonathan Jace Green, a DACA recipient and social justice activist. Roland, I'm disgusted. I saw Rittenhouse's comments. The fact that he had the Tucker Carlson cameras embedded with him the entire time. Now he's going on Tucker Carlson's show. I'm just curious, what do you make of all of this? And what message does this send to the many other vigilantes out there who are salivating at the opportunity to walk the streets with their AR-15s?
Well, it's no shock at all. What we're dealing with is we're dealing with now white grievance. I've been saying for more than a decade now, we're dealing with white fear. To think that it's so important for you to leave your home in Illinois, cross the lines with your AR-15, so-called patrolling the streets to protect property. We have to understand this is not just Kyle Rittenhouse. We've seen this with these folks on the border. We've seen this in other places, the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys, and there's going to be more of this. Let me say this again, America, there's going to be more of this. And you have to understand the Tucker Carlsons of the world who are playing the game, Fox News, they're living in the land of white grievance. You've got Rupert Murdoch saying Donald Trump should move on, yet his network is the one that's driving this whole deal of the election being stolen. White grievance is driving this, and they're specifically tapping into the white grievance of young white men. This will not be the last time this happens.
I tend to agree with you, Roland. And Katie, we talked last hour about that he has support in the halls of Congress. I want you to take a listen to Congressman Madison Cawthorn and his thoughts on the verdict.
Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty, my friends. You have a right to defend yourselves. Be armed, be dangerous, and be moral.
Be armed, be dangerous, and he follows that up with be moral. He's made a lot of questionable comments, I'll say. What do you make of that?
I think Madison Cawthorn doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I think that he and his best buddy, Matt Gaetz, who offered the congressional internship position. Let me be clear. The words Matt Gaetz and congressional intern, we've seen those words before paired together. The bottom line is they cannot sit there and incite violence and think that there's not going to be a consequence. And maybe that consequence is them getting voted out of office. But Marjorie Taylor Greene celebrating this verdict from yesterday, Madison Cawthorn with his words to incite even more violence. You know, the problem again with what happened yesterday with the verdict is the legitimization, the idea that what happened was illegal and that it's okay to continue along this vein. I think you also have to be able to take them out at their knees. And Tiffany, that means it's cash, almighty dollars. If you can take away the money, like, for example, Alex Jones, if you can take away the money from him, if you can take away the money from these people to be able to fund white supremacy, that Unite the Right civil lawsuit that's going on, we're going to get a verdict in that case. And if it's big enough, you can just really start to hit them where it hurts. And if it's their pocketbooks, then that's definitely one way to be able to shut down this type of rhetoric that is just pure hate.
Yeah, you go after the money and all of a sudden people pay attention. I agree with that. Jonathan, there were actually white power signs outside the courthouse after this verdict was delivered. Like we've said throughout our program, he's immediately become a darling of the right. This certainly sends a message to other people who want to follow in his footsteps. I want you to take a listen. We have to remember there are actual victims here. So take a listen to the girlfriend of Anthony Huber. She spoke out after the verdict was delivered.
I miss Anthony every single day. Every day I wish that I could come home to him and unload some of this weight that's on my shoulders. But I can't because he's dead. And now the system is telling me that nobody needs to answer for that. And I have a problem with that.
The system said no one needs to answer to that. Your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, my heart goes out to Hannah and every family member and community member of those victims that were impacted by Rittenhouse actions, right? So I think, one, acknowledging that pain, and it makes sense, and I'm really sorry that this is where we are as a country. But I think what this really underlines for me is the importance of protecting and defending our multiracial democracy. And how we do that is by building solidarity, right? Like, we've known for a very long time that people of color and people who believe in freedom and justice are under attack. What this verdict says is that it's open season on us. And what this is also is a call to action to white folks. Listen, if you believe in freedom and justice like us, you're also not exempt from the violence that stems from these systems of oppression. So this is our time to act. This is our time to actually demand not just tinkering around the edges. The system is not fine. The system, yes, works, but it's working as designed to oppress our communities. So what we need is to start over, because as the popular chant says, the whole system is guilty as hell.
Right, and I think that's an important point to make. You know, no one is targeting individuals. We're saying this system. It was built on a system of white supremacy. Some people get defensive about that. You have to remember that. A part of that system created the GOP. Just when you think the GOP can't go any lower, the floor drops out from underneath them. Take a listen.
You know what? Kyle Rittenhouse would probably make a pretty good congressional intern. We may reach out to him and see if he'd be interested in helping the country in additional ways.
The GOP is wrapping all its arms around crazy, meaning at this point, anything is possible. Let me explain and recap a bit from just this week alone.
If I must join Alexander Hamilton, the first person attempted to be censored by this House, so be it. It is done.
Censoring a member for a cartoon. You got to be kidding me.
When there was violence against us, there was no condemnation.
We're critiquing Paul Gosar's anime. Next week, we might be indicting the Wile E. Coyote.
The Jihad Squad member from Minnesota has paid her husband, and not her brother husband, the other one, over $1 million in campaign funds. Let me say that again. A member of Congress who receives classified briefings was sleeping with the enemy. This is unacceptable. This is a dumb waste of the House's time.
These are actual members of Congress. Jonathan, I want to stick with you because a lot of people say, you know, well, these are, you know, older white men who are losing their grip on power. And that's not true. The devil is a lie. You know, this is Kyle Rittenhouse was 17. Madison Cawthorn, young person in the halls of Congress, espousing the same white supremacy and ridiculousness. Almost a third of young voters who cast a ballot in the 2020 election self-identified as Republican. The vast majority of those Republicans, 92% to be exact, voted for Donald Trump. Only 25% of young Republicans believe that Joe Biden won the 2020 election fairly. This is not going anywhere. And I think we're at a precipice in this country. Some people would argue we're not at a precipice. The country has already fallen. This is bubbling up to be something bad. Your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right, Tiffany. I think when I think about the modern day Republican Party, I think about a party that is comfortable either implicitly or explicitly embracing white supremacy and fascism, right? So like that's what we're actually talking about. And I think that first of all, it is illuminating and disgraceful. But I think on the other end, what is also illuminating and disgraceful are all the people and institutions that give legitimacy to these types of ideologies. Even folks on the Democratic Party who are insisting in building consensus. There is no consensus with people who do not believe that Black people are full human beings and deserve human rights, right? So I think for me, we have to be clear about who we're dealing with. Growing up, my mom in Spanish would always say, dime con quien andas y te diré con quien eres, which means tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And I think it's very clear that the Republican Party has told us who they are and we have to believe them.
Yeah, and I got to be clear, Katie, this is nothing new. This has always existed. This is not a new phenomenon. What happens here, given voter suppression happening all across this country, do you anticipate more people like that finding their way to Congress? I just want to point out that at least 6 people who were at the riot when they tried to overthrow the government on January 6th, 6 of those people won office in November.
So there's a phrase that keeps on raising its head often, and it's a movement not a moment. And listen, that can have good and bad connotations, but what's terrifying is that the future of the GOP is bleak, because just like Jonathan said, you are judged by the company that you keep. Scarily, this is a movement, not a moment. For those of us that have been so naive to believe that this is just a drip in the pan, that 4 years under Trump was just a drip in the pan and it just didn't mean anything. No, that's not true. And, you know, I have had the scales fallen from my eyes to realize this has been around for a long time. And so what's critical is the idea that, you know, our judicial system was supposed to be that last place of refuge for you. It was the place that you were supposed to be able to go to get that justice. But that justice now apparently is being skewed by laws that are antiquated. This in the Arbery trial, that antiquated law on the books that you could do the citizen's arrest, which we all know came from, you know, Civil War era, right? So this idea that we need to go back and we need to fix things starts at home, but that has to do with who is representing us in office. There's that see her, be her. It's that relatability, right? If I'm a white juror and I see a white defendant, I'm more inclined to acquit that white defendant because I'm white, because I can relate to him or her. So we got to make sure that we have more visibility, and that not only comes at the ballot box, but we have to have the voter integrity, but you have to have access to the ballot box, and you need to be able to have the laws that protect you so that you have the politicians, the judges, and the people that are in the roles of power to implement the laws that are going to make change. It's not just us screaming in the streets.
Yeah, I agree. Roland, yeah, go right ahead.
I think we're making a mistake when we keep saying that the future of the GOP is bleak. That is simply not true. It is not true. What we have to understand is that when you hear, we got to listen to phrases. Let's be clear. There are a significant number of white Americans, when you say white supremacy, they say, not me. When you say white nationalism, not me. When you say white privilege, that's not me. Yet, when you look at what they're voting for and who they're voting for, it's a whole different deal here. You have to listen to the phrases. We're losing our culture. We're losing our way of life. We're losing our democracy. Those are the key phrases that signal something to many folks like a Kyle Rittenhouse that is different from someone else. When you have folks say, oh, Kyle Rittenhouse, Eric Erickson tweeted this, Kyle Rittenhouse is not a terrorist, Colin Kaepernick is not a hero. I'm sorry, Eric, why are you even mentioning Colin Kaepernick in the same breath as Kyle Rittenhouse? Why? Because, oh, how dare you take a knee against the flag? It is the language that is key, because we have been defined through the prism of whiteness, what are our values and our culture. And so that's what you're dealing with. The two folks who were killed, they were not black, but they were out there protesting, you know, in terms of Black Lives Matter. People say, well, they were violent. But the question is this here. Do you still fire someone? Do you still show up with an AR-15 to do what? You're not a cop. What are you patrolling? It's the value mindset, and there are a lot of white people in America that we have to understand who would never say I'm in those categories, but will vote for the very people you just showed, and they'll say I'm not racist, I'm not a nationalist, but they'll still vote for them on the federal level, the state level, and the local level.
That's such a good point, Roland. I'm so happy you made that point. Really quickly, we're a little over, but I want to just get in the quick question to you. Twitter, a new poll research dropped from Pew showing new data this week. It turns out that nearly 1 in 4 adults currently use the platform, and that the most active 25% of Twitter users produced about 97% of all the tweets. I'm going to say that Roland is a part of that 97%. And this comes to no surprise to someone who's actually used Twitter. But Roland, I want to stick with you, because I think what people miss about social media is it democratized who has a voice in this media landscape, because for so long, people who look like us on this screen were not given a voice. So social media had such credo. If you did not talk to us, we were going to create our own spaces digitally. And that's what you see happening here. As someone who has created your own space in these different platforms, what's your thought on, you know, the use of Twitter and how it's being engaged? Because some people say it's made them more politically active and more informed. But there is always, as journalists, you know, we have a bit of a problem about people being declared themselves experts on this platform as well. What's your take?
Twitter is not the only voice out there, but you're right. It is a distribution system for people who have been shut out. The gatekeepers freezing people out. The ability for me to create a digital show and now my own OTT network, Black Star Network, is because I've been able to drive and monetize and maximize social media. And so that's the key. The traditional gatekeepers no longer control access to the information, but we can't get lost in thinking that Twitter is the be-all to end-all. No, that's just a slice of America. It's not exactly what everybody thinks.
All right. I don't know what I was thinking having all three of you on the same panel because we are way over. They're screaming at me in the control room. So thank you so much, Roland Martin, Katie Phang, and Jonathan J. Green. You'll all have to come back. Thanks for being up with us this morning.